Welcome to the Week 11 edition of Johnny's Intangibles. I'm Collin Wilson. Joining me today and every week is Johnny Manziel. We're ready to talk about the latest happenings in the college football, shakeups all over the place after some amazing games in Week 11. But where we always start is Johnny's MVP of the week. We could go anywhere from Quinn Ewers to Bryson Daly and go to Jalen Milroe at Alabama. But Johnny, who do you have as your Week 11 MVP of the week?
I got Ashton Jeanty, another unbelievable week for him. 34 carries, which that is just an absolute workload for another game of over 200 yards, 209 yards, and another three touchdowns. I mean, for the season, that puts him up to 1,700 yards, 23 touchdowns. This guy is just playing, unbelievable week in and week out. And the guy, I think, every single week that I'm checking the stat book as the game goes on to see what this guy's up to every single week. So another unbelievable performance by him.
Yeah, I've been assigned the Boise State San Jose State file for the weekend, and I believe there's going to be probably a prop in there for Jeanty 500 total yards and 5 touchdowns. He is on a tear right now. But I think the big story going on in the Power Four right now is just that there's parity overall in college football. There's a chance that we could go to a 7-way tie in the SEC with everybody finishing with 2 losses. What's the biggest reason for this parity in college football? Is it NIL? Is it the portal? Or is it a factor that none of us are realizing?
No, I think more than anything, it is the portal and being able to have guys come in and be able to. I think you add a little bit more depth for the season than when you're in there. I know in the past years, especially whenever I was playing, if you had a big guy go down, you had a walk on maybe coming on or somebody else, and I think this just gives you a little bit more depth for this season. Now, obviously, at the end of the season, it changes because guys are going to be flying around and going different places. But for now, I really think the parity in college football comes down to the way that the college football world is set up right now with with the transfer portal.
Yeah, depth is everything. We talked about that in the offseason, that if you do not have second and third stringers, the schedule is going to get you. And I think Florida is a prime example of that. Speaking of that Ole Miss game, the defense is the best that NIL money can buy, just terrorizing the Georgia offensive line. And Carson Beck, who we talked about in film review last week, just throwing interceptions with only 3-man pressures, did the same thing against Ole Miss. But I have to ask you, who is the more ferocious defensive line? Who would you take into a big game, the Ole Miss defensive line or the Texas A&M defensive line right now?
I think if you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago, coming off of an LSU win, you would probably say Texas A&M. But I think the performance that Ole Miss had this week was as good as you're going to see from any defensive line throughout the country the entirety of this year. So I'd probably give a little bit of an edge right now to Ole Miss just based off how the D line and Texas A&M played against South Carolina in containing sellers.
Yeah, South Carolina way up there too. I think one question that I was going to ask this week, Johnny, was about the Ole Miss defensive line. When you have an NIL deal and it brings all of these players back in, will they be there for bowl season if they don't make the college football playoff? Say if they make the Music City Bowl or if they make some Jan 1 Florida Bowl, do you expect the NIL players that built this Ole Miss defensive line to stick around?
I mean, what we've seen over the last couple of years is the guys who are in a position to get ready for the NFL draft, if you're not in the big bowl games or if you're not in the playoff, seem to get ready and take the meaningless, I guess, if you look at it that way, bowl games off. So, these guys who are looking at the NFL draft and looking forward and looking ahead, if you're not in the big ticket, I would expect them to probably do what we've seen in the past.
Yeah, thanks to tiebreakers, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss are going to need some help getting into that SEC championship game. But one team that has plenty of tiebreakers is Alabama, who went on to beat LSU. Jalen Milroe was outstanding, completely healthy. And Johnny, Stuckey and I handicapped it. We thought that he was going to take care of the outside defensive edges of LSU. They had really poor rushing grades, but that's not what happened. In our film review here, you can see that Milroe is attacking the middle of the offensive line, the A and the B gaps. He reached as high as 21.9 miles per hour in this specific run. Johnny, as a mobile quarterback yourself, is there a bit of tentativeness to go through the A and B gap? Do you always want to pop it outside? What is it that you have to see over the A and B gap to take off through the middle?
No, I think in this case for Alabama here, obviously after having some struggles over the past couple of weeks and really trying to get a spark, how do you do that? You get the ball to your best player and get him doing what he does best, which is running downhill. So, we've seen at times Jalen Milroe getting outside and getting on the edges on some keeps and stuff, but this is just an awesome game plan for them to be able to have even a running back on this play, will get into the gap a little bit, get some blocks for him. But, for him to be able to have this vision that he has, I think it's just an unbelievable thing to be able to have your quarterback being able to run in between the tackles and being able to get downhill right away and use his speed to be able to, really put this LSU defense in a bind.
Yeah, a lot of defensive coordinators are going to be up at night watching those runs from Jalen Milroe. But another quarterback that didn't have a great day was Cam Ward. Ultimately, Miami losing to Georgia Tech on a fumble by Cam Ward. Miami's going to be 23-point favorites against Wake Forest. They're going to be 13-point favorites on the road against Syracuse to close out the season. Is now a good time to buy the Miami Hurricanes to win the ACC, to potentially win some games in the college football playoff?
I think it's a good time to probably buy them to win the ACC. I mean, I think they're still going to continue to go on and be able to do that. I just think with this team, you've seen a pattern throughout the season. It's just how many times are they going to be getting away in these close games? It could have happened earlier in the season in Virginia Tech. It could have happened multiple times, and it's a little bit of a pattern of what they've been as a team. They're not a team that gets out on you early, who stomps on your throat a little bit and puts you down. It's kind of like they come alive whenever they're down 7 points and have to come back, and that's just a recipe for disaster. You're going to run into a team in the college football playoff who's not going to let up, and you're not going to be able to come back from the deficit. So, they have some things to definitely work on over the next couple of weeks, but what they want to do in the ACC and still, getting themselves into a nice position in the playoff is still all very much in front of them.
It's going to be interesting during the selection committee to see if they put SMU up in one of those top four, probably the fourth spot, undefeated in the ACC. It's going to be crazy down the stretch. Another conference race that is crazy down the stretch is potentially going to be the Big 12. Although if you would ask some coaches and athletic directors, there may have been some bias and some referees. Utah athletic director Mark Harlan comes out. He was fined $40,000 for comments about the officiating during the Holy War. And when you look at this play, this defensive holding that's going on, to me, Johnny, it looks like holding. But if you're a Big 12 referee, I mean, do you consider this a little bit ticky-tacky, the magnitude of the game at the point of the game in which this came? Do you just kind of eat the flag if you're a referee, or are you calling defensive holding no matter what?
I mean, it's definitely tough to be able to go into some of these huge situations and have it come down to a holding or a penalty call that's going to keep, this game and this drive alive. I think anytime you get your arm extended out like that on this play and you have full extension and you have a hold of the jersey, it's going to be one of those things that they're looking for right away and they're able to see. So, even if it wasn't all that much, anytime you get full extension on the arm and you have a piece of the jersey and it's very clear and visible like that, some people won't agree with it, but it kind of is the rules and it is what it is.
Yeah, the Big 12 is going to be wild to the finish. Johnny, we're going to go look at a viral moment here that happened at Virginia Tech and Blacksburg. I have not been to Blacksburg before, but what I do know is that I'm 230 pounds. And if someone gives me a turkey leg, nobody is eating off of it. We have a bunch of guys. Is this typical bro code to share a turkey leg, or is this just dudes being dudes, or am I missing something? Is there something in the water in Blacksburg sharing a turkey leg?
I think this is just anytime you get, 10, 12 beers deep and you're just getting absolutely hungry to the point of where you can't help but, munch on one of your bros' turkey legs a little bit. So I think this is a little bit of dudes being dudes, but man, that guy really did bite and hold on to that thing for a while. If I'm the main turkey leg holder of this thing, I'm probably a little bit upset after that. But you know how these college football games are. It's a long time to get to the concession stand. Maybe you don't have the funds to be able to go and get one for each one of the boys, but interesting look in Virginia Tech here for sure.
12 Lone Stars for me, and maybe I'll let some of my Razorback friends have a bite. I don't know. So anyways, during the Colorado Texas Tech game, Texas Tech does this all the time. They've been throwing tortillas since the beginning of college football. And right now there's one out there on the auction market for a tortilla actually being signed. The whole story behind it is crazy. What is the weirdest item you have ever been asked to sign in your career?
And I was at a signing probably about a month ago, and a guy asked me if I would sign the top of his bald head. So that definitely goes up there on the list of wildest things I've signed. But anytime my first actually ever game that I got to go to whenever I was in college as a part of the A&M football team was at Lubbock and against Texas Tech, and the tortillas and batteries and everything rained down from the stands as you're running out on the field. A really, really crazy environment. Pretty cool to see that. Sanders signed one of these, and it's funny that it's already made its way out to the market.
Johnny signing bald heads and guys not taking showers for the rest of their lives to keep that signature. All right, that's going to do it this week for us for Johnny's Intangibles. Thanks for joining me, Johnny. We'll be back same time next week to recap college football week 12.